and welcome to Little Learners. Today's video is a much requested video that I did actually film quite a while ago, and then I lost lots of footage and it was quite emotional. So let's just pretend that never happened and start again. I've had lots of questions from those of you who are new to reception, NQTs, or even those of you who have been working in reception and just want to evaluate your own practice about how I plan my week and how I set out my provision. If you end up finding this video helpful, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe for more videos just like this. So I did make a video not too long ago about the basics of planning, long-term, medium-term and short-term planning. So if you haven't seen that and you want to get a bit of a reminder, or if you don't know about those yet, you want to learn about them, I will link it in the description box below and in a card. Today I'm just going to be focusing on short-term planning really for reception and how I do it, but obviously there are lots of different ways of doing your planning and lots of different ways that different early years settings do their planning, different schools do their planning, so do take it all with a pinch of salt, and maybe if I say something about my own practice that you like, you can pick and choose the bits that you want to do and implement them in your own practice. So let's talk about planning for the week. Normally what we would do is look at the medium-term plan and take a look at what learning objectives we have for that medium term, so maybe that might be a half term or a term. And usually we will have decided beforehand how we're going to break up that medium-term plan into kind of chunks. If you're in a setting where you do topic-based learning, then maybe you will have broken it up into topic-based chunks. You might have done it slightly differently, but usually you have an idea of kind of what order you want to do all of these objectives from your medium-term plan in. So once I know what objectives I want to have in my weekly plan, I will also then look at the week before and see if there's anything that I want to carry over, maybe something that the children didn't quite understand or something that the children really enjoyed and I think they will really engage with again this week, and that might help their learning this week. Then I'll make sure to put that in, and I'll divide everything up into the areas of learning. So I'll have a heading for all of the areas and then put kind of the objectives that I want to do under each of them, and maybe even just some notes about some particular activities that I want to do as well. Now, it really does depend on your setting how much detail you need to go into in this plan. Some settings I know have to submit their plans to SLT, some don't like to really do very detailed plans for the week. If you're in a 1-form entry school, your planning might look very different to teachers in a 3-form entry school. And the other thing that comes into it is if you have books or not. So some settings still use learning journals or exercise books, whatever you want to call them, where children actually write in the exercise book. This is usually more common in receptions attached to a school rather than a standalone reception or reception attached to an early years setting. So if you do have a requirement of how often children need to write in their books, which is a completely different video, then you might need to put that into your planning. But usually I would just write the objectives and any activities that I really want to do. I will make sure that there is a good chunk of learning for every area so that every single week we have objectives in every area of learning. Obviously, these aren't standalone lessons, so I might have an objective in communication and language which I can achieve by doing some work in understanding the world. So you know how that all goes, where everything kind of interlinks. I'll also make sure that I've written down which letter sounds we're going to be focusing on that week, so whether we are introducing those sounds or if we are at the point where we are revising those sounds. If we're introducing a sound, then we just do 1 sound per day. Another great thing to do if you do have last year's plans is just to have a look, and often you can just tweak those, because if they worked last year, then often they will work this year. You might just need to tweak them a little bit for the children that you have. So then once I've got my weekly plan, I then move on to my timetable for the week. So timetabling is actually a big part of my planning, because in timetabling I'm not just saying, okay, here we're going to learn this sound and here we're going to do this and here we're going to have a music lesson. I'm actually writing down the activities that I want to do and some of the provision that I want to make sure I have out. I always think that it's good on a timetable for reception to have Friday completely clear. And this is just something that I really like to do because you never know how the week is going to go. You never know if children are going to struggle with something and it's going to take longer than you thought it would. You never know if children might really be so engaged in something that it ends up taking longer than you thought it would, or you want to revisit it at the end of the week. So I always think it's good to not fill your timetable with too much so that you feel stressed because you haven't got through everything by the end of the week. In one school I worked in, we did reading every afternoon with the children, so we had provision set up, but the teacher would be doing reading with the children one-to-one, and so that we could write in their reading journals, and we had to read with every child every week. So that meant that the morning portion of the day was really the time when any directed tasks or activities or teacher-led or teacher-encouraged activities would be taking place. I also like to mark out on my timetable any activities or areas of provision that I think will be really good for observations. So obviously you're doing observations all the time, and the new guidance for September does say that we don't need lots and lots of evidence to back up our observations and our levels for children. But if you want to be conscious about what observations you're doing, it can be really helpful just to put a little star next to an activity because you think, oh, I feel like the children are going to show me some really good language in this activity, or oh, actually it would be really good to watch the children when they're doing this addition activity because I don't feel like I know exactly where some of them are at the moment. So that can be quite helpful. When it comes to provision, I usually have an idea of what I'm going to do during the week, and then whatever the children are interested in, I'll try and put that into the classroom as well. Some days I will come in and decide that morning that a certain table is going to have a certain activity on it. So, you know, I think you have to be really flexible in reception and in early years in general. So let's look at this sort of provision map that I've made here to give you an idea of what the classroom setup might look like first thing in the morning. So here we have our main areas. We have our carpet area at the front. We have a table at either side of that. We might have another table depending on how big your classroom is. Then we have a table which is kind of our art area. We have a reading corner and we have a role play corner. Now again, this is obviously dependent on how large your classroom is and what your classroom setup is like, so this is just an example. We then have the outdoor area as well, where we can have something set up. Now it's really important to remember that not all early years settings have the ability to have the outdoor area accessible all the time. They should be able to use the entire outdoor area and for children to be able to just go wherever they want to, but staffing is an issue. So if you don't have enough staff to be able to safely manage indoors and all of your outdoors area, then you have to kind of improvise. So you might have just a bit of an area outside your classroom, if your classroom backs onto the playground, for example, where you're going to set up some provision and the children know that they're not to go past that point. So if you're having a little bit of an outdoor area, you might have your water tray, your sand tray. You might have an area for building. Just make sure that you do have some outdoor learning, and then obviously during the week, and you can put this into your timetable, you will have time when the children can be supervised and can use more of that outdoor area. So let's take a look at this example then. Once the children have done their kind of morning registration and maybe some phonics learning and they go off to their provision, this is what the classroom might look like. So on the carpet we might have some building activities going on, so maybe some Duplo or some Mobilo. That's for children to make whatever they want to make. Then we might have a phonics activity, so maybe we'll have some sound buttons that I've recorded my voice saying certain sounds into, and then the children have to listen to those and find the objects that start with that sound. So if they hear a P, then they go and look for a pig, for example, getting our technology in there as well. Then we might have a pattern making activity where children are threading beads onto some string, and maybe we've got some examples of different patterns they can make, and then they can make their own patterns as well. In the reading corner, children are just able to freely look at any books that are in there. I might also have some cuddly toys as well, so that children can snuggle up with a teddy bear and also read to their teddy bears. So sometimes children find it a little bit nerve-wracking to read out loud, but reading to a teddy bear, they seem to be okay with that sometimes. So we'll have some of those in there as well. On our art table, maybe we have brought in some nature, so if it's autumn, maybe we've brought in some dried leaves and some twigs and a little bit of soil, and maybe we'll throw in some autumnal colours like some red, orange and yellow paint, and children can just make whatever they want with those resources. Then we'll have the role play corner, which usually will be set up in a different theme each half term. If you're working in a topic-based school, then it will probably align with the topic that you're doing. Then we've got our other table that might have some small world play on there, like a farm or a pirate ship. I also like to put a basket of books that are related to that small world play on the table as well. And I also like to put some keywords on there, maybe some CVC words, or depending on where we are in the year, some trickier words that relate to that small world play. So we've got some reading in there as well. And often I like to put some numbers in there as well. So for example, if children are playing with a pirate ship small world play and I've got some little shells in there, I might take a picture of 4 shells, laminate that, and do a few of those so that they can start matching and counting the shells. So it just gives you an idea of how you can bring lots of different areas of learning into the small world play. Then if we go outside in our water tray, maybe we will be washing clothes and hanging them on a washing line today. In our sand tray, maybe we've hidden some dinosaur bones, and children have little shovels and little brushes so that they can excavate the area and discover the dinosaur bones. And then maybe we have a mat on the floor with a doll's house or some more building materials. And if you're able to in your outdoor area, maybe you might have some gross motor skill activity going on out there. So for example, some hoops and children are throwing beanbags into them, or maybe just children can run around as much as they want to and invent their own games, because of course that's really important too. So that just gives you an idea of the different types of provision that you can have out all at once. And for me, having different areas where I know I'm going to have different areas of learning, and of course lots of them mix, is just really helpful. Of course, deploying support staff is also really important. When I started in reception as an NQT, I did have a teaching assistant, but only in the mornings. So in the afternoons, I was just by myself, and that could be really, really difficult when you've got this provision and children everywhere, and you've got to keep an eye on all of them and read with them all at the same time. So depending on if and when you do have support staff, make sure you're using them. Take a look at your weekly planning and your timetable and decide where would be best to have these support staff working. Also remember to ask your teaching assistants or your other support staff what they really like to do. I've had a TA before who absolutely loved everything to do with art, so she did lots of the art activities, and it meant that a lot of our art provision got to be even better than it would have been if I had done a lot of it. And I've had a TA who really enjoyed working with children on their numbers, and she would do lots of interventions with them. She loved doing that, and that worked really well. There's no point in having someone who is really talented in a certain area and not utilising that talent. So make sure you talk to your support staff about what they really like to do and what they feel they are most talented in, and see if you can use that in your classroom. Okay, so that was a lot of information. I hope it's given you an idea of how I might plan my week and my days and how things go. As I said, you really do need to be flexible in reception because the days do not go the way you think they're going to go most of the time. You can have a nice structure to your day, and I have made a video before about the daily routine in a reception class and kind of the structure of the day. So if you want to know more about that, I'll link that video below as well. Let me know in the comments if this video was helpful. Is this the way you do things? Is there anything that you liked or that you didn't like? Anything you might be taking into your practice? Is there anything that you do that you think other teachers might really benefit from knowing? Please let me know in the comments below. I really love it when you all share tips with each other in the comments. It's just an example of how great the Little Learners community is. Don't forget, I now have a website, littlelearners.education, where you can learn lots about early years, you can buy resources, and you can book consultations with me. So be sure to check that out, and don't forget to subscribe to the Little Learners newsletter. I will leave all the links in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.